People from all over the world are still in shock after the death of Kenny Law, a celebrity both in Franklin County and on television after his time on Discovery Channel's series Moonshiners.
These men outran sheriffs on mountain roads, survived gunfire, built massive fortunes, and pulled stunts that could have landed anyone in federal prison. Moonshiners made them familiar faces in living rooms around the world, and for years, many viewers believed they were unstoppable. But behind the scenes, some lost their lives, and others lost their health and loved ones. What happened behind those cameras, and what did their struggles and final days look like? From fatal accidents to frightening traumas, these are the tragic stories of 10 cast members. The last one never got to say goodbye. Lance Waldrup. At just 30 years old on February 25th, 2021, Lance Waldrup was found unconscious in his bedroom in Robbinsville, North Carolina. His mother had spoken with him less than 5 hours earlier before this happened. According to her, Lance had gone outside to smoke. Then he came back inside to play some games before going to bed. Sadly, Lance never woke up, passing away during his sleep to the shock of his mother. He appeared on Moonshiners from Season 2 to Season 7, alongside his father, Jeff. This made him one of the younger faces on a show full of older veterans in the business long before he was born. Yet as we will see, Lance's life was marked by years of personal struggles with painful consequences. Before his passing, there was a long story of grief and pain that had been eating at him for years. Both of his siblings had cystic fibrosis at a very young age. Because of that, his sister Lindsay died at 11, and his brother Lamar had a lung transplant and passed away at just 20 years old. Lance was the only one left standing, and his mind was plagued by survivor's guilt. He turned to opioids to take the pain away, grew too dependent on them, and spent years fighting addiction before going to rehab. There he conquered the addiction and was ready for a fresh start. Yet another problem was on the horizon. After spending months at rehab, he returned just to find out his mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Wanting to be with family more than anything at a time like this, he left the show to be her full-time caregiver. He cooked, cleaned, and waited on her by hand. And it was right in the middle of this difficult time that he passed away. An autopsy confirmed he died from congestive heart failure, likely traced back to morbid obesity and cardiomyopathy. Lance had finally conquered his mental struggles and was ready for a fresh start, only to suddenly pass away at home at just 30 years old. Yet his struggles and tragic passing were just one out of many. Popcorn Sutton. Marvin Popcorn Sutton was the godfather of Appalachian moonshine. He was often described as a scrawny, long-bearded mountain man from Maggie Valley, who had been outrunning federal agents since before most of the show's viewers were born. While some think Marvin's nickname came from his association with corn whiskey, a much closer look tells a very different story. The man's popcorn nickname traces back to the early 60s at a local bar. Marvin was frustrated because a popcorn vending machine stole his money without giving him anything, and so he angrily smashed the machine with a pool cue. That event cost him a $50 fine, and from that day, he was called Popcorn, and that name would stick with him for the rest of his life. Often alone in the mountains, he made liquor in the old way, working his way up from scratch. And he was so good at his job that he wrote a self-published guide to the craft that sold really well. He also appeared in documentaries that won regional Emmy Awards and quickly became recognized as a legend of the business in his own lifetime. But that was until the federal government caught up with him. In January 2009, news broke that Sutton was accused of wrong distillation of spirits and owning firearms illegally. He pleaded guilty to all the accusations and a judge sentenced him to 18 months in federal prison. The report date was set, and Sutton received his letter to report. But when the time came, he never showed up. Many wondered what had happened to him, and little did they know that he had passed away. According to reports, this happened on March 16, 2009. His wife Pam came home from running errands and found her husband sitting in his old green Ford Fairmont at the back of their property in Parrotsville, Tennessee. The car was still running, but Sutton had passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning. It was 10 days before his prison sentence was scheduled. He was 62 years old and was already struggling with a cancer diagnosis. Though he had passed on, his legend only grew after he left. Sugarland's Distilling now carries his name, with his face on the bottles and a legacy never forgotten. Kenny Law. On January 14, 2025, Everett Kenny Law passed away at the age of 68. This makes him the most recent loss among the Moonshiners cast, with the tragedy being a massive hit to Franklin County. But, as we'll see, though many people already know the cause of his passing, the unknown story behind the real cause traces back to late 2018. Kenny joined Moonshiners in Season 8, along with his cousin Henry Law. They were both third-generation distillers, grandsons of the strong-willed Amos Law, who was once known as one of the most wanted illegal moonshine operators in the country. Kenny inherited the craft and lived it to its fullest. Though many aspects of his work were part of the show, even more interesting were his activities behind the cameras. Off the show, Kenny and Henry built Law's Choice Distillery in Franklin County, where they turned everything he knew about the hidden moonshiner community into a business. Kenny Law loved to work, running a roofing business while also running Shine. He was the kind who forgot to rest until his body decided not to work anymore. Sadly, that wasn't an exaggeration. For many years as he worked hard, Kenny also fought heart trouble and diabetes. Then, in 2024, he suffered a heart attack. After that came a blood infection that put him in the hospital. He would spend a month fighting this as well before his cousin Henry revealed that Kenny had passed away. Among those left behind were his daughter Kenzie, his grandsons Atlas and Fox, and his cousin Henry. His co-star Steve Tickle wrote online that Kenny was a wealth of knowledge and always stayed loyal to the end. Kenny was part of a long line of traditions dating over 200 years into the past, and he died without the world fully understanding what was lost. The big question was, who would pick up from where he left off? Sadly, the answer to that question leads us to yet another tragedy: Steve Tickle. Every episode, the show warned viewers that anyone making moonshine risks might either get hurt, lose their lives, or spend lots of time in prison. Yet Stephen Ray Tickle managed to handle both the legal trouble and natural dangers of the activity. And what happened next was catastrophic. But before that happened, Tickle had become one of the most beloved characters on Moonshiners. Beyond being a daredevil, he was known for his easy laugh, personality, and friendship with Tim Smith. But his life off camera, as we'll see, was as a regular customer in court, and his legal battles started in 2013. This was the same year he announced he was running for Congress, but when police found him alone in a convenience store parking lot, drinking from an open container, he was arrested for public intoxication. He paid the fine, but that scandal was only the beginning. In July 2015, a routine traffic stop by the police for a broken headlight quickly turned into a felony charge when officers found a sawed-off shotgun in Tickle's truck. He was convicted in January 2016 and handed a suspended sentence of 3 years. Tickle said a friend had given him the weapon years earlier, but would go on to violate his probation not long after sentencing and was sent back to prison where he served 5 months. Season 8 of Moonshiners showed Tim Smith driving out to pick him up from prison on release day. Their first stop was a diner where Tickle ordered a BLT. He said he had been eating prison eggs for months and he was done with eggs. He came back to the show not long afterwards and stayed out of trouble for a while. But by season 15 in 2026, Steve Tickle was out in the woods again, running illegal shine with Tim Smith, apparently unable to permanently stay on the right side of the law. He has been known as a daredevil, but Josh was far worse. Josh Owens. This person has had the highest number of accidents and near-death experiences of all the members of Moonshine. He would do something reckless, get in an accident, recover, and allegedly become mindful of how fragile life is, only to get into the same harmful habits months later. Among Josh Owens' earliest injuries were partial loss of his fingers during a grinding wheel accident, traumatic trailer fire incidents during returns from rallies, broken arms from using power tools, and many more too gruesome to be mentioned in this video. And very soon, unfortunately, his luck would run out. On March 4th, 2023, Josh was competing in a motorcycle race at Daytona International Speedway when he lost control while coming around the final turn. The impact was catastrophic, with so many injuries that doctors placed him in a medically induced coma for 10 days just so his body could stabilize. However, the real surprise came when he finally woke up, and the damage report was staggering. Josh Owens had a broken neck, a fractured back, a broken arm, broken legs, and a shattered shoulder. And then, worst of all, Josh Owens had no health insurance, so his friend immediately launched a GoFundMe. Later on, his co-star Tim Smith tweeted that Josh's arms were still working, so he might still be able to make some shine. But he would not be able to walk again for at least a year. The Franklin County community, that had watched him on television for over a decade, rallied hard. And another fundraiser at the Rocky Mount Smokehouse drew hundreds of supporters. This wasn't his first crash, as just 2 years before, in late 2021, a vintage motorcycle tire blowout had torn his left rotator cuff and broken his collarbone, shoulder blade, and ribs. Roy Grooms. Roy's death was tragic, but also marked by mystery. This was the man who never asked to be famous, but happened to end up on television and become a beloved part of the series. Before then, he was just a moonshiner from the hills of Robbinsville, North Carolina. Born on December 6, 1946, Roy spent his life in the mountains of western North Carolina. He loved attending and promoting community events, local music festivals, and bringing people together. His Facebook page was filled with invitations to the Hillbilly Winter Jam, an annual celebration he followed each year and promoted freely. Roy's last Facebook post came in February 2017, and then, for over an entire year, his feed went silent. Nobody knew what happened to him during this time. The next thing the public heard of Roy Grooms was about his passing on February 21, 2018. This happened at Harris Regional Hospital in Sylva, North Carolina. He was 71 years old, and no official cause of death was ever released publicly. His daughter Allison was the one who shared the news on social media, asking friends and fans to honor him the way he would have wanted, by showing up at the Hillbilly Jam and telling stories the way he always had. She wrote that Roy had been looking forward to seeing everyone, and that they should carry on by sharing his memories and keeping his spirit alive. He left behind his wife of 47 years, Kathleen, his daughter Allison, a granddaughter, and 2 brothers. Tim Smith. Tim Smith built a legal empire that kept his family hiding from the law for generations. But then, in January 2026, he walked away and went straight back into the woods. Tim was the face of Moonshiners from the very first season. a third-generation Appalachian distiller from Climax, Virginia, who made the best illegal whiskey in the region and had spent years perfecting the art of not getting caught. When he finally went legal by licensing his Climax Moonshine brand that sold very well, it finally felt like the show's central tension had been resolved. The outlaw had made peace with the system, but that only lasted until the tariffs changed everything. When the season 15 premiere aired on January 6, 2026, Tim Smith told cameras he was going back to the illegal side. His reason was simple. Rising federal tariffs had crushed his legal distillery's sales and supply chain. The illegal market, meanwhile, was wide open. To help his operations, he brought Tickle and Henry Law into the operation. They ran in the backwoods of Virginia, and they were almost put down when someone put bullet holes in their still. But that didn't stop them. After building a legal empire, he decided to take a federal risk while still having a full season to play out. Today, his life is at risk, but he keeps going, just like our next person here. Jeff Waldrup. Jeff was the father of Lance Waldrup, the 30-year-old who was found unresponsive on February 25, 2021. He was the one who confirmed the news to the world. Together, they had been a team on Moonshiners from Season 2 through Season 7. Many viewers remember the banter, the mistakes, and moments of genuine pride. And though viewers watched that relationship grow, what they did not see was what was happening off-camera. Lance had been battling survivor's guilt and opioid addiction for years after losing 2 siblings to cystic fibrosis. Jeff had to watch his son fight through all this. And to his delight, Lance was finally able to overcome his addiction, get himself clean, and dedicate time to take care of his mother, who had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. But all went lost when Lance passed away, and by the time of his death, Jeff was out of work. Now, the entire family had left Moonshiners to care for Lance's mother. But things got a lot worse when COVID shut down Jeff's construction work entirely. The family had no income, and the requests in their GoFundMe description made it clear that the household was under enormous strain when Lance's death arrived without warning. Jeff has stayed largely private since his son's passing. He has not returned to the Discovery Channel spotlight. There has been no dramatic comeback narrative, no redemption arc on camera. All we see is just a man processing an unspeakable loss out of the public eye. Mark Ramsay. Mark Ramsay has spent over 10 years in the woods of East Tennessee, building one of the most recognized partnerships in Moonshiners' history. But when the Season 13 premiere aired on January 2nd, 2024, everything stopped because of a medical diagnosis that could cost him his life. His longtime partner and closest friend, Eric Digger Maines, pulled him aside and delivered news that he had been diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, a cancer of the blood and bone marrow. The cameras caught the moment, and the world watched Mark Ramsay receive that information in real time. With many fans getting concerned, Digger moved quickly to clarify on Facebook that the show's editing had made his condition look more severe than it was. He explained the disease as a chronic condition that wasn't necessarily fatal, but changes how a man sees every single day. For Mark, that diagnosis landed on top of what had already been a difficult stretch. When the news came, he and Digger were running a Cockey County operation that produces roughly 300 gallons of liquor per week. They had been building their brand for years, expanding across the state, launching new products. The future was looking bright for a whole, and now, one half of that partnership was fighting cancer. No more news has come after that social media post, and some are speculating that the worst has already happened. Fans now are more concerned than ever, yet this didn't come close to what we are about to show you. Jim Tom Hedrick. If you watched Moonshiners and only remembered one face, it was probably this one. Whether it was the long white beard, the battered hat, or the wild stories that seem to come from the previous century, many agree that Marvin Jim Tom Hedrick was the soul of the show. So when he died on September 6, 2023, at 82, many viewers believed Moonshiners never felt the same. Jim Tom was born on Christmas Day, 1940, in the mountains of Robbinsville, North Carolina. Contrary to his legacy now, Jim was not a character invented for television. But what no one could deny was that his skills in the community had been in demand across the South long before Discovery's cameras pointed in his direction. When Moonshiners came calling in Season 2, he joined the cast and stayed for 5 years, and he earned his reputation as one of the most skilled and most watchable Moonshiners in the show's history. After leaving the series, Jim partnered with Sugarlands Distilling Company in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, becoming one of the oldest and first Moonshiners to lend his name and his craft to a legal operation. Sugarland's president Ned Vickers later said that Jim Tom's stamp of approval had been vital in showing the company's values as well as marketing. But as we'll see, Jim's final years were very difficult. Jim Tom was diagnosed with kidney cancer and had to spend months on dialysis. For practical reasons, he moved into a nursing home in Robbinsville. And on the morning of September 6th, a family member confirmed that he had died peacefully, surrounded by those who loved him. His co-star Tim Smith posted well wishes, the Discovery Channel called him a treasured member, and Sugarlands posted a tribute with many kind words. He taught an entire generation of distillers. He endeared himself to millions of strangers, yet lived a life on his own terms, in the mountains where he was born. And somewhere up in those hills, if you know where to listen, they say you can still smell the smoke from his still today. Which of these losses, incidents, and tragedies impacted you the most? Is there any fact we've missed out? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it. Until next time, take care.